What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, I wanted to talk about the state of the Utah Jazz and this series against the Clippers right now. As I'm recording this, Game 3 just wrapped up, and the Jazz lost that one, so it's 2-1 now, staying in LA for Game 4. So kind of just talking about, more of a Jazz focus on this video, kind of talk about where this series is headed, injuries to a couple of the Jazz players that are kind of nagging, and we'll see where it goes from here, and whether or not they'll be able to win this series. So the first two games of this one were pretty close, right? I mean, both of those games, the Clippers were right in it until near the end. And then, in Game 2 specifically, LA sort of had a couple of defensive lapses that allowed the Jazz to get a couple open shots, knock those down, and pull away a little bit there at the end. But both of those games were there for the taking for the Clippers, and they just didn't end up getting it done. But as we know, there's that saying in the NBA that a series doesn't start until the road team wins. And that still has not happened in this series. The home team's won all 3 games so far. So the Jazz have taken care of their business, and then obviously the Clippers took care of their business at home in Game 3. So we'll see what happens in Game 4. That could be a big swing game as well. Clippers could either tie it up, or the Jazz could get a 3-1 lead going back to Utah, which would certainly be huge. So we'll see what happens in that one. But we had, 2 really close games tonight. It was like pretty close into the fourth quarter. The Jazz were hanging around or down around 10 points going into the fourth and for most of the fourth quarter. And then the Clippers pulled away a little bit there at the end after Donovan Mitchell had to exit temporarily with an ankle injury. And let's talk about these injuries for Donovan Mitchell and for Mike Conley. So Conley obviously pulled his hamstring late in that series against the Grizzlies in Game 5. He pulled his hamstring and only played a couple of minutes in that one, and has not played so far against the Clippers. He's been sort of day-to-day. They've been ruling him out game by game. There's no exact timetable on his return yet, so we'll see if he ends up coming back for Game 4 or potentially later in the series if he plays in this series at all, because, hamstrings, as we know, are kind of tricky, and Conley had been dealing with a hamstring late in the regular season as well, and it's sort of flaring up on him again. So we'll see if Mike Conley's healthy. Hopefully for the Jazz he is, but he's been out, and for the most part they've been okay, right? Obviously they haven't been quite at their normal ceiling because he is a good player and he helps them out a lot, but they've still been, hitting a ton of shots, and they were able to obviously, like I said, take care of their business and win those 2 games at home. So it's not the end of the world if Conley doesn't play. They're still capable of winning this series, but he would be a big boost to them if he's able to come back. The other one is Donovan Mitchell, and this one is certainly a lot more concerning if I was a Jazz fan, because Mitchell is a key part of this team, obviously, has been, absolutely turning up his play in the postseason for the past 2 years. We saw what he did last year in the bubble, and this season so far he's been sensational. Really great against the Grizzlies, and then also here against the Clippers. He's just been going absolutely berserk in this series so far. So Mitchell is that guy for the Jazz, and he tweaked his ankle again. We saw him kind of tweak it late in Game 2 as well, and obviously he'd been dealing with that late in the regular season after he kind of rolled that ankle with about a month to go. So he had missed a bunch of time, and he seemed like he tweaked it again here. Now, I wouldn't be, too concerned over this one, considering it looked like he was able to come back in the game, but they chose to hold him out because the Clippers were kind of, they pretty much put that one away. They were up like 15 with like 4 or 5 minutes left, so Mitchell maybe could have played if it was a closer game, but they decided to not risk anything and held him out for the rest of the night, which I think was probably for, in the best interest of Mitchell and the Jazz. So hopefully he's good to go for Game 4, but that, it can throw a wrench into this. If he can't go, I mean, I'm assuming he's going to play in game 4, but there's always the chance that he isn't 100% or he re-injures it and has to go out again. So hopefully he can play, and hopefully Conley can play, but if both of those guys are out, the Jazz's chances of winning this series go way down. So honestly, I could see this series going either way at this point. I think the Jazz are good. I think the Clippers are good. Both of these teams are playing, close to their max level right now. I think the Clippers tonight showed the type of team that they can be. They were kind of hitting shots. Paul George played well. Kawhi played well. Whereas in Game 1 and 2, they looked kind of a little clunky and a little worn out after that Game 7 series against the Mavericks, which, makes sense. So, Game 3, the Clippers kind of showed their full potential. The Jazz were really firing on all cylinders in Game 1 and 2, obviously without Conley, but still, you had guys like Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles and Bogdanovich all hitting shots, and that's kind of the peak of what this Jazz team can be. So both these teams are really playing well right now, in my opinion at least, and we'll see how they go for the rest of the series, but I think this one's evenly matched. I picked this series to go to 7. I did pick the Clippers at the start of it. I'm not entirely sure how I feel now. Like I said, I think the series is not going to start until the road team wins a game. So, we'll see if the Clippers are able to steal one in Utah, and if they do, I think they'll have a much better chance of winning the series. I mean, they have to win the series, right? They don't have home court advantage, so they do have to snag one of those games in Utah, and we'll see if they're able to get one. Meanwhile, if the Jazz win in LA, I think that's, that could be pretty much a death sentence there. So we'll see how this one continues to unfold, but it looks like it's going to be a fun one. I'm hoping that it goes 7 games because these two teams are, I think, about as good as each other at their peak powers, and I'm hoping that we get a fun series out of this one. And so if the Jazz do advance to the conference finals, they're most likely looking at the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are up 3-0 right now on the Denver Nuggets, so looking pretty good for Phoenix right now. And if we do get a Utah-Phoenix series, I would still favor Phoenix. I said this over the past couple of days. I think the Suns are the best team in the Western Conference. I think they're, they've been rolling the entire playoffs, to be honest, and they're just really, really good. So I would favor the Suns there, but I think this could be an interesting matchup, especially if the Jazz, have all their role players hitting shots, because that's been the upside for this team all year. They're a great three-point shooting team. They're empowering all of their guys to be able to hit those three-point shots. They get open looks and they knock them down at a super high rate. So if you have, Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson and Bojan Bogdanovic, excuse me, knocking down these shots, you're looking pretty tough to beat. I mean, the Jazz are going to steal, a couple of games against any opponent just because of the variance of shooting alone, right? They're not going to get swept, and I don't think they're going to lose in 5 to anybody. I would pick any series with the Jazz to go 6. Just because of the high variance of their shooting, they're going to be able to steal at least 2 games against really any opponent. So I think, this Utah team has the upside, and that's kind of the fun part about the teams that are left in the NBA right now. A lot of people have the Nets as the title favorite, and I do as well. But with the James Harden injury kind of, up in the air, and a lot of people have questions about their defense. So, the Nets are probably the favorite, but there are quite a few teams left who could potentially win the title, and the Jazz are one of those teams that have sort of that upside that you're looking for when talking about a potential title contender. So, out of everybody that's left, because a lot of the superstars and a lot of the teams that have been winning titles over the past 5, 6, 7 years have already been eliminated this postseason, we're going to get a new title winner this year, and the Jazz could definitely be that team. So yeah, the positives you can take away from this playoff run, win or lose for Utah, Donovan Mitchell has established himself as a superstar. He's putting himself in the conversation for a top 15, top 20 player in the league, knocking on the door of that top 10. It's so hard because there's so many good players in the league these days, especially all these young guys, and we've seen them all prove it in the playoffs. Guys like Donovan Mitchell, as well as Devin Booker from the Suns, and obviously Trae Young on the Hawks, and there's all these young guys, Jason Tatum on the Celtics as well. These guys who are going off on these high pressure stages and stuff. But, the guys in the generation above them are also still really, really good. Guys like Steph Curry and LeBron James and Kevin Durant are all still really good. So there's just a lot of really good talent in the NBA right now. Donovan Mitchell is one of those guys. So is Rudy Gobert. Both of those players are really, really talented and really good. And they're proving it on a national stage with this Jazz team. So you got to give a lot of props to Mitchell, especially because he's had just a sensational series so far. And here's hoping that the ankle doesn't limit him too much, because he's just been really fun to watch. And so have the Jazz. But yeah, I think that's about all I have on Utah and their series against the LA Clippers. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Jazz. Are they going to win the series against the LA Clippers? How many games is it going to go? If you think the Clippers are going to win, how many games do you think they'll take to win it? Would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But yeah, with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.